Normally, so when we pass plates, they usually help us out with that. Just out before the supper, and they do a lot of little things in the service. The usher ministry is a very important ministry in the life of any kind of faith community. They do lots of little things that are behind the scenes, but and then some things that are right out in the open. So we're very thankful for that ministry, for those that want to lead that up. And she's got others that help her out with that. So we're going to miss her. And so if you're interested in the ushering here at the chapel, feel free to talk to her after the service and wish her well as she goes back. Where are you going back to?
Charleston.
Charleston. Oh, that's a great place. Some good seafood up in that area. So a lot of good food up in that area. Barbecue and everything else. So, yeah, that's like a foodie heaven over there. So see where my mind is today. So yeah, we do wish you well as you head out. Thank you for all the service you provided in this community. And so if you're interested in helping out with that, feel free to talk to her afterwards. I mean, your family is a big part of ushering. I'll be carrying that torch on. So get ahead with those guys. Anybody else leaving us next week? We got one over here.
Wednesday, back to Florida.
All right. Get back to Florida.
Got a few schools to take care of before the end of this year. So pretty excited.
Yeah, you're leaving a little bit before the rest of your guys,
Yeah.
so just because of schools, wish you well in the school, great success, and continue on your career. So, all right. Anybody else? No. Anybody new with us today? Anybody brand new? Brand new with us? Look at you laughing. Yeah. Okay, you kind of gave yourself away.
Yeah, we're just visiting for a week.
Systems that they have.
Some of we can't talk about.
Oh wow, okay, great. Well, glad to have you. Glad to have you guys here and be with us. We do have the live stream going this morning. Looks like it's the signal working really well. So that'll be going. And if you want the link to that, I'll put it in the chapel email that I send out every Monday. And you can send that out to your families and let them watch the service that we do here every week. Just a couple of announcements. Keep you guys up to date with what's going on with the offerings. We're still not accepting cash. Eagle Cash is still here. Still haven't got the portable machine, so it's still the one that's plugged into the wall. Feel free to do that. We've got some workarounds for those that don't have Eagle Cash cards. And there's all different ways too. I just want to throw this out there. There's all different ways of doing giving back to the ministry that God gives to us. And that's really what the offering is about. We can go out, and a lot of us do. We go out and we do great things here in the area through orphanages and chapel hikes and just giving money to somebody on the street that's in need. And that's great because that's a ministry, a personal ministry that you can provide. That mainly comes through you. As you give somebody something, they see you giving that, and that's a great ministry. The offerings, one great thing that I love about offerings, it supports the work that we're doing in God's kingdom. As we support the ministries and things, that's work that no one gets the credit for. It's the church, and it's the work of the church, and people know that that's the work of God in their midst, and it kind of brings God into their presence. And so that giving that we do, it brings God into the community and the work of God into other people's lives that may not even ever come to chapel. And so that's kind of what offerings are all about. They support the breakfast and all the dinners and all that stuff that we do here. And so as you give, that's what it's supporting. So there's different ways that you can give. If you don't have an Eagle Cash card, that's fine. You're actually there's many different ways of supporting the chapel, the work of the chapel, and the things that we're doing. If you want to bring in a bag of groceries that you got from the BX, that would be fine too. And actually, we can do that very easily. It's just we cannot accept cash at this time. So you don't see the offering plate. So if you're wondering why there's no offering plates, that's why. But for a lot of people in their faith journey, part of their faith journey is giving back. Because
Stand up. morning, everybody. Good morning. All right, everyone's caffeinated. I like that God's word. But before we begin, since this is my first week, I want to take a moment to introduce myself. I am Chaplain Don Fulton. I am the new 228 chaplain. I've been here actually 4 weeks today. Today my 1 month. So thrilled to be here. I realize I'm 8.2% done with my time here. So and I still don't have the pay right. So welcome to Sotocano, right? I'm originally, you might hear a little twang. It's my surprise some of you, I'm not from New York City. I am from Birmingham, Alabama. Grew up in Birmingham. I grew up Presbyterian. I grew up in the PCUSA church. And when I was in high school, I started going to Briarwood Christian High School, which is a PCA church. And actually, Briarwood is a founding church in the PCA. So was very influenced by the baptism. I decided to actually be baptized. If you want to send any emails to Chaplain Seligman on that. So I joined a Baptist church and did believer's baptism in college. And have been Baptist ever since. But as many of us, my theology has developed over my life. As we get older, I think it's easier sometimes to see that not everything is black and white. You know, when you're 18 to 22, it's real easy to see everything is black and white. But the beauty of the way God speaks to us is He gives us life. The great thing about life is it's scars. I went skiing several years ago with some buddies from Alabama. Now, due to that, sounds not very bright to begin with, right? So we're out in Lake Tahoe going skiing. I've never skied before. And we couldn't find where they're doing the lessons. And so my buddies had all skied, and they're like, oh, we can teach you how to ski, don't worry about it. So about 15 minutes later, I'm going down the slopes in the medevac because I heard this great big pop. Turns out the great big pop was my ACL. And so I've got 2 great little scars there. Now 3 of my friends tell me, you were stupid to believe us. You should have known better. But one of my friends who has this very tender and sweet heart, every time I see him in Birmingham, all I do is just, oh, hey Chris, it's good to see you. And his heart breaks. But the reason I like to share this story is that scars are what make the beauty of Christ, because the scar represents what was fixed. So here we live in this fallen world where you go down the ski slope and you hear this pop and you look for the tree branch and you realize it's times, hard lives. You know, you can look at different stories, and you, as a pastor, I'm always like, how do I start a sermon? And I was on the martyrs this week, and there's a story about a pastor that he was killed. He was hacked to death by North Korean agents for being a Christian. So I thought that was a good story, but then I got to thinking, I don't know this pastor. I can't put a face to him. So I want to paint a picture of a beautiful woman who's had quite a bit of suffering in her life. Now, before coming to the military, I pastored a church in Nashville, Tennessee, in East Nashville, Shelby Avenue Baptist Church. I am considered their missionary to the Army now. I'm still a part of Shelby Avenue, very close to these sweet, dear people. One of them in particular, got to know very well. One July Saturday morning, I had a call. There was a call from her son saying, Mama needs you. Mama needs you in East Tennessee, if you can get there. Her grandson was in a diving accident. Her grandson died on the way to the hospital, was revived, made it to the hospital on life support, but no rain activity. So they gathered the family in, and here's Margaret. Margaret's a very faithful woman, very sweet woman. The family makes the decision to stop life support. So Margaret's grandson dies. She goes through this struggle. Margaret's back in church the very next Sunday. Very faithful, never complains about her lot in life. And Margaret's had a rough life. She had a husband that died when she was young, left her with no pension, left her with a house that was mortgaged, and left her in foreclosure. So Margaret lost her house, lost her husband. Now she's lost her grandson. Still faithful. Shelby Avenue Baptist Church every year hosts a toy store in East Nashville that gives Christmas to those in need. Margaret has been a faithful worker of that for over 50 years. Never missed one. Well, she breaks her arm. Margaret's in a cast. She starts crying at the emergency room. Not because of the pain. She's crying because she can't help. These children out there need help. Margaret heals. Margaret comes back to church. And I don't know if any of you have ever said this, I know some folks, they'll say, Pastor, I can't come to church because if I come to church, the roof will cave in. Well, Margaret's at church every Sunday, and one Wednesday night, she's in church in our fellowship hall, and the roof caves in. Breaks her shoulder. So you think this woman would never want to come back to church. So my deacon, our deacon who handles the finances, is scared to death Margaret's going to sue, and Margaret's like, I want to show me my whole adult life. I'm not suing the church. So Margaret heals, Margaret comes back to church. But Margaret's perspective is that God is making her into the woman that He would have her to be. So she doesn't say that God planned these things to happen, but knows that He can use them for her glory, for His glory. So what we see is Margaret has a gospel perspective on her life. And that is what we're going to start studying today. We're going to look at the first chapter of the book of James. The book of James very much is a book I like to call the process of salvation. The book of James shows us what we as followers of Christ should look like. How do we live? How do we go forward in our belief? Now the book of James has some Luther. It was up to Martin Luther. Martin Luther pulled out the book of James and never had it in the scripture. So today as we start our study on the book of James, in James chapter 1, my challenge to you is, as we read through this, as we study it, ask God, what is He revealing? But ask God, how does this work? This is a letter from James, a slave of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ. I am writing to the 12 tribes of Jewish believers scattered abroad. Greetings. Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. If you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and He will give it to you. But He will not rebuke you for asking. But when you ask Him, be sure that your faith in God is strong. Do not waver, for a person who has divided loyalty is unsettled like a wave of the sea that is blown and tossed by the wind. Such people should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Their loyalty is divided between God and the world, and they are unstable in everything they do. My friends, as followers of Christ, we are first called to consider it pure joy when we face struggles. Now, I like the way the New Living puts this. I was reading out the New Living, by the way. I like the way the New Living puts it. He says, consider it an opportunity for joy. Now, I remember when I was in the corporate world, I used to work for this very cheery lady, Mitzi. Mitzi was cheery as could be. Anytime you saw Mitzi, she had a smile on her face. She was fun to be around. Mitzi was deaf as the day was long. She would sit in her office. We had these little cubes, and it'd be funny. When Mitzi was hiring someone, she'd be trying to talk quietly on the phone, and she said, I'm going to offer how much to that person do they get a year? And then she'd say their salary out loud. So everyone knew what everyone was making because Mitzi was deaf as could be. But Mitzi always had this joy. And this joy was bubbling up because she knew ultimately God was in charge. But she also considered everything an opportunity. When something went wrong, she wouldn't come and say, oh my gosh, we got trouble. She'd say, I got an opportunity for you. Now, I just started working for Mitzi, and before being in the corporate world and going to ministry, I was involved in politics. And politics can be a lot of fun, but it can be a crazy world. And so one of my friends was a public service commissioner in Alabama. And I was working for Bell South that's covered by the Public Service Commission. So I had this great idea to invite him to speak to us. So I called George and said, hey George, would you like to come speak to my department? We do lunch and learns. You can come and talk. George's like, yeah, that'd be awesome. I'll do that. So I'm like, cool. The boss is going to like this. Well, a couple of weeks later, here I am. I'm a management employee at the very bottom. So this is like being a second lieutenant. I am the lowest management employee you can be. And I'm sitting outside a few doors down from Mitzi, and I hear Mitzi say, Don Fulton did what? And I'm like, oh snap. And then I hear her call me, Don, get in my office now. She says, do you know who that was on the phone? I'm like, no ma'am. That was the president of Bell South, Alabama. So I get a little nervous. And she says, he wants you to know it's his job to talk to the PSC, not mine. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been here 3 weeks, I'm gonna get fired. It's awful. But Mitzi said, this is a great opportunity for you, Don. It's an opportunity for you to know the right channels to do things. So I wipe the sweat off and I'm shaking. I go back to my desk and I'm like, oh, thank you. But how we face problems is an opportunity for joy. You know, Mitzi, she could have crushed me. She could have made my life miserable. But she said, this is an opportunity for us to learn. And Mitzi would also tell you, I expect you to make mistakes, but I expect you not to repeat them. So for her, there was always an opportunity in something. So this is what we see from the book of James, that we consider it an opportunity for joy when we face different trials. Now, making a boss mad and worrying about losing a job, in the grand scheme of things, that's maybe not a huge problem. Now, if you want to pay the rent and car note, maybe. But when we look at what's going on aside, you see, my brothers and sisters, there's trouble in this world. All of us have trouble. But the call of Christ, the call of the gospel, is to step away from ourselves. The call of Christ is to look to Christ and know that what is happening in our life, what is going on, is leading us to that glorious day where one day the promise of Christ is He is coming back. The promise of Christ is this broken world will not remain broken, but everything that is wrong will be made right. So our opportunity for joy in times of trouble is not that we enjoy abuse, not that we say, oh yes, I want to be hurt more, I want more pain, I want more anguish. Our opportunity is going away because everything will be made right and perfect. So in this process of salvation, this process of life that we have, we choose our attitude towards the trouble that comes our way. You know, looking out, I know there are different stories here. I know there are probably stories of financial brokenness, relationship brokenness. Some of you sitting out here might have been raised in a home where there was no love. Some of you might have volunteered to come on this deployment because there's something at home that you're trying to avoid. But my friends, the beauty of Christ, the beauty of the gospel, that He will make everything right. Maybe not the way we want it. Maybe not in our timing. But James here is telling us, consider it an opportunity for great joy. And the joy comes from knowing the trials we face in this world will make us stronger. It will make us endure in Christ. It will make us right with God. The second thing we see from this is that as followers of Christ, we must live with forgiveness. Now it's interesting, when we read the forgiveness, I believe, is here. Because we see James telling us that our faith is made stronger when we go through trials, when we go through problems. And often the first step to overcoming a problem is what? It's granting forgiveness. Now I love the word forgiveness. As a chaplain, I do a good bit of marriage counseling. Now here I probably won't, because I don't think too many of you have spouses here. And we could do Skype. You know, I can always Skype counsel. But I love doing marital counseling. And one of my favorites, you are going to think this is crazy, but one of my favorite type of counseling is when there's infidelity. Now, let me say it straight up. I believe marriage should not have infidelity. I believe marriage should not have any other person coming in between it. But I like doing marriage counseling for infidelity because two things. It shows that the people coming believe in forgiveness and believe in the beauty of the bond of marriage. They believe that God has brought them together and they can work through it. And often the spouse will say, well, I've forgiven them, but, and then the but is, but I still don't trust them, but I still think they're going to do it, but I'm still watching everything they do, but I really haven't forgiven them. So forgiveness is a tough thing, and when I have that type of counseling, the first question I ask is, define forgiveness. And I'm going to ask you right now, I want you to define forgiveness in your head. Take a moment. Now, Willie Nelson, the great theologian, says, forgiving you is easy, but forgetting seems to take the longest time. And often when I ask people what forgiveness is, the answer is, I just forget it. It's like it never happened. Well, we're humans. We can't do that. I mean, we can try, but we still remember. Forgiveness is giving up the right to be resentful. Forgiveness comes down to giving up the right to be resentful. And I like that word right, because when we are wrong, we have the right to be angry. But as followers of Christ, we're reminded that we have been forgiven so much that what we forgive others doesn't even compare to what God has forgiven us. So James says, if you need wisdom, ask our great Father. Times of trial, often it's hard to understand where the opportunity for joy is, and that is where we ask our Father for wisdom. And He promises that He will give it. Now notice here, I like this. This is a passage I've struggled with a lot. And my grandmother, so I mentioned I was raised Presbyterian. My grandmother was raised in a very Baptist church. My grandmother was a very strict Baptist for a long time. And she told me that when she was growing up, she'd get mad at her mom, because every Friday night after her father died, my great-grandmother liked to go to the store and buy one beer and have one beer. But she'd wrap it in a paper bag so none of the people would see it, none of the Baptists in her Sunday school would see that her mom was having that beer. And Grandma told me it made her so mad that her mother would drink that one beer. Well, Grandma went to college. She moved past that. She was a sorority girl. And my grandmother was very interesting. My grandmother actually stole my grandfather away from one of her sorority sisters. And when my grandmother died, that sorority sister was still alive. And my grandmother told my grandfather one thing: you can remarry after I die, but you cannot marry her. And so my grandparents both were raised Baptist, ended up Presbyterian, and Grandma's theology changed. And the reason it changed was because of her brother. Now, my Uncle John was in the Army Air Corps. Uncle John was a pilot. Uncle John was smart. Uncle John was, you think of what a perfect, good-looking pilot should look like. I don't see any, oh wait, my Raiders here, so. Oh, it's kind of like my boss. So you think, sorry, sir. So you look, Uncle John was that. He was charming. He was raised to be a dedicated servant of Christ. He went to Sunday school. He went to church. Well, Uncle John had one little problem. He liked women a whole lot. And by a whole lot, I mean often and a whole lot of women. And so Uncle John went on to marry 6, 7, 8 women, not quite sure how many, and had a very active life. And my grandmother had a real problem with faith. She said, the Bible teaches that if you're raised right, that even if you depart, you'll come back. And John has never come back. And so I think of this passage, James, where James says, when you're going through these troubles, ask for wisdom, God will give it. And I've struggled with that because we've all gone through these problems like, God, where is the wisdom in this? Where is the joy in this? But James is sneaky. Now, James was the brother of Christ, maybe the cousin of Christ, grew up with Jesus. And if you read James closely and read the Sermon on the Mount, you'll see some great parallels. James is a little tricky here. I think he was a Baptist minister. James never said when you would get that wisdom, did he? He promises that it will come, but he doesn't promise the time. So when we ask God for this wisdom, we must accept that we might not know today. We might not know tomorrow. It might be years. But we will know. We might not know why we didn't marry that person. We might not know why we didn't get that job. We might not know